this meeting of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Before we start, just a reminder as ever that tonight's meeting is being live streamed and will be recorded for publication on the Council's website. Item 1 is to receive apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Fox and Councillor Cockshaw, who's been substituted by Councillor Johnson. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you very much. Item 2 is to receive the minutes, which are on page 5 to 20 of the agenda. Move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of November 2025 are approved as a correct record. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? No. Okay, can we take it that they're approved then? Agreed, thank you very much. Item 3, any declarations of interest? No, no declarations of interest. Item 4 concerns unplanned scrutiny items and members' right of reference. I've not been notified of any such items, so we'll move on to item 5, which is a briefing note on the provisional saving FIN 01 2026, and that's David, I believe, or Councillor Morris-Cook.
Perfect. So, yeah, I mean, David is the technical one, so if there's any technical questions, David will be there to support me. So really, it's an update on the actuary valuation of the Essex Pension Fund and the proposed changes to the employer contribution rates that's affecting Thurrock Borough Council. The background of it is Thurrock Borough Council is a major employer in Essex Pension Fund, which is part of the local government pension scheme, and it is a statutory defined benefit scheme. The employees' contributions range from 5.5 to 12.5 of pensionable pay, and employer contributions consist of the primary rate, which is the cost of the benefit accruing, and the secondary rate is the adjustment based on the funding position. So the current position is that the rate was set in 2022 for 2023 to 2026. The primary was 21.9, the secondary was minus 1.1 due to a surplus, which gave us a net of 20.8. The latest valuation shows the fund is 110% funded, with Thurrock's valuation surplus valued at 59 million. So basically what that's saying is that we are in a position to take down our secondary rate by about 2.5%, which equates to 1.5 million, if I've rounded it up, over the next 3 years. There is no risk to anybody of pensionable age. There is no risk to anyone that is currently drawing their pension from Thurrock. When the actuaries work these figures out, they go from the sublime to the ridiculous in the scenarios that they raise, and we have got the most risk-adverse position of 1.5 million.
Thank you very much. David, did you have anything to add at this stage? No? Okay, are there any questions from members? Councillor Cecil.
Thank you. When was the last actuarial forecast
2022 that I said.
that had a deficit? Because when was the last one which had a deficit? This has a surplus, doesn't it?
Yes, I don't know that
and you
answer.
can have a deficit?
Yes, I don't know that answer.
Well, when we had that deficit, we had to pay an increase into our secondary contribution.
If
yes?
there had been if the actuary, when they had completed their forecast, had forecast that our pension fund was not funded sufficiently, Thurrock Council would have had to have, on their secondary payments, increased their payments to ensure that the fund is fully provided for. So in 2022, that was not the case. Yeah. In 2025, when it has been done, that was not the case either. The next one will be in 2028 for 29, going on to 2031, 32.
Okay, I'll stick with your answer. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thanks, Chair. A piece of stunning timing. I've just joined the Pensions Advisory Board, and I had my induction this morning. So I can tell you, if it's any help, that between 2019 and this year, we have been never less than about 98%, and on at least 2 occasions, over 100% funded. It's worth bearing in mind as well that the great thing about a defined benefit pension is you are working with you know what you're working towards. So if they say we're overfunded, there can be a reasonable degree of confidence that that's what we are, if that helps.
Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions? I think just to remind, the reason why this is here, obviously this was a saving that was put forward as a budget saving. We looked at this at the budget scrutiny meeting. We've asked for it to come back for some extra clarification. I think that this really does provide that. It gives us an overview. I think any uncertainty that there was has been dealt with, and I've got confidence in it now. Just one very quick question though. At 1.11 of the agenda on page 22, it says that it is a draft valuation. Is that still the case? Have we made this saving on the back of the draft findings, or is there now a final valuation?
So, excuse me, it's still draft until the point it's been finalised. So they're now going round and consulting all the employers in the fund, and that will be finalised in the next few months. But it's very much given that there's not going to be any change there because it was based on March 25. So there's no scope for changing that.
Okay, so we can take confidence in the fact that despite being draft, it won't change. Okay, thank you. Is that there no final questions or comments on that item? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for bringing that item back as well. I think it's provided the clarification that we need. Thanks very much. So we're moving on to item 6, which is the Corporate Improvement Plan, Q1, Q2, and that's at pages 23 of the agenda to 88. Leader, are you going to speak first on this? Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Chair. So I'll keep this really brief because I want to allow officers to walk you through the report itself. But can I start by thanking this committee, especially for the feedback and the scrutiny on this work over the past year. This report, more than any that I have any responsibility for, is the one that really shows the journey we have been on and how far we have come in improving. You will see that the work continues to evolve and improve, and it will continue to do so. The newly adopted Corporate and Improvement Plan means that this year's milestones and metrics have been reviewed to ensure they provide a good indicator of how well we are meeting the plan's priorities. Officers have listened to your feedback, good and bad, over the past year, and you will see that the data is presented in a way which draws your focus to the areas which requires attention, tells us how we are performing compared to the wider sector, and importantly brings together our corporate performance metrics with the wider work we are doing to improve and recover from the intervention. Together this provides a complete picture of the direction of travel for this organisation, and I am pleased that commissioners have now recognised the good work which has gone into making our performance more transparent and how the work enables us all to be more accountable to our residents. Before I hand over to the officers to present this report tonight, I'm going to hand it over to Patrick. I would like to have on record my thanks to the officers for the work that they have done producing the report in its new format, which I'm sure that as you work your way through it, you will see that it's much improved and much easier to navigate. So I'm going to hand over to Patrick, who is one of the authors of this, and he'll take you through exactly what's in the report for you tonight.
Thank you. Patrick, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Chair. Very pleased to bring this report to this committee this evening and echo the words of the leader in our thanks for your input to the journey that we've been on. We have discussed here the Corporate and Improvement Plan. You were clear that you would like to see the Council's improvement alongside the Council's performance, and we have taken clear steps to bring those two things together in this set of reporting. You were also clear that you wanted a more accessible look to the data, that you wanted more analysis in both the covering report but also in the information of the report. I would draw your particular attention to a few new aspects of the report, so our achievements in that first section, but also the areas to watch where we are seeing particular reds or particular ambers that are of concern. You'll see written analysis there of why that is the case. You will also see that some of the milestones and metrics in the report, which you kindly agreed with us, have got stars next to them. Where there is a star, that relates directly to our improvement journey and demonstrates to you something that you might wish to draw particular attention to in terms of the council's improvement. The information provided sets out clearly both the milestones and the metrics, and we're pleased to be able to say that there is, alongside the work we've done and we've discussed at this committee before about keeping those milestones and metrics in an information bank so we know that they have the right tolerances and they come from correct sources, we also have definitions at the back of this report for each of those metrics. On the basis of that information, very happy to take any questions from the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Patrick. Are there any questions, Councillor Fletcher?
Thanks, Chair. Really just sort of improve my understanding. On page 28, at 5.3, we mentioned that of the 72 milestones, over 83% are on track, slightly over 15% are making progress, none are red. Then going a little bit further down against metrics, we have about 29% currently off target. So I was trying to picture in my mind, because there'll be a lot of situations according to that where we're on target for a milestone, but off target on a red for a performance metric. And I wonder if you could give us an example of that so I can actually, because I'm struggling a bit to see how that might work.
I've got colleagues who may want to add further, Councillor, but thank you for your question. Particularly on milestones as opposed to metrics, where, as we've done this work for both Q1 and Q2 at the same time, and we set the metrics, set the milestones after the refresh of the corporate plan. Because that work is in the control of officers and they are undertaking that work on a day-to-day basis to reach those milestones, I would expect there to be a level of control at this stage in the year about where those milestones were, and I would expect us to see a number of greens on the basis of the work undertaken. We know, particularly with metrics, that we're not setting ourselves, so to speak, but we're using benchmarks against national or local data, that sometimes the change we are enacting through a milestone takes longer to show in the data. That might be because of service delivery, the impact on people's lives, or indeed how that metric is reported. And so I would, given that the milestone work is in control of officers, I would expect there to be more greens in those spaces at this point in the reporting cycle.
Thanks, Patrick. It's probably me, but I'm still sort of struggling a bit. So milestones, we're talking about, generally speaking, a lot of them can, time related or whatever. Is that the I suppose I'm struggling to see the difference between a milestone and a metric, particularly insofar as you can be totally on track with milestones or on track or near, and then quite a serious percentage, about 1 in 4 metrics being off track. I'm struggling to marry those up, and it's not a catch-out question. I'm genuinely trying to work out how those two fit together.
I'll bring Sarah in if I may.
I think possibly an example to illustrate the two is against the deliverable to embed the think family approach. So we've got a milestone where officers are developing a project, a piece of work to move along that area of work, but the metrics that support that are still showing actually there's a lot of pressure in that area of the organisation. We've still got quite a lot of looked after children that are outside of the placement of which we would desire it to be, but actually the activity they've chosen to focus this year to try and progress against that, they're on target in terms of the work they want to do.
Thanks, that does help actually. So in that example, yeah, we know we're on a journey. We've hit the specific activity we want to take you know, to do, for want of a better word, but we know we've still got ground to make up to actually be okay overall. I think I get it now. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for presenting the report. In terms of its readability and its layout, I do quite like it. I do appreciate that. Is there anyone from Children's Services? I'm not going to go through loads of individual sort of metrics, but thank you very much. So the only metric I wanted to specifically touch on was the percentage of new education healthcare plans being delivered within time frame, because we have a target of 70% and we're currently at 27%. My question is, in the little explainer box below, we're told, first of all, it would seem that the reason we're that far off of target is because we're having difficulty recruiting psychologists. But then it says that locum, private educational psychologists, are supporting us with our vacancies at the moment. So although I'm sure we'd like to have, you know, that 8.3 full-time equivalent in-house, it seems that they are being covered. So given that, why is there such a large discrepancy in our target and what we're actually delivering?
Thank you for that question. I'd just like to offer my apologies first and foremost, because that sits within the education part of children's. I'm more with children and families and early help, not the education element, so I don't have the detail that you require, but I'll certainly take that back and get the information. I'm sure you're aware there's a SEND inspection on at the moment, so I do apologize. We don't have anyone from education present this evening.
Thank you. Yeah, I would appreciate a response to that. So I'll get in touch with. I don't know if Democratic. Oh, all right, okay. I was going to say I'll get in touch with Sheila, but if Democratic Services will, that's great. Thank you for that. The other question I had surrounds, and this isn't children specific, surrounds data quality. So we've got a series of metrics here, and I was wondering how we ensure that, you know, these metrics that we're reporting on are accurate. I'm not suggesting that there's anything nefarious going on. I do a little bit of data quality in my 9 to 5. Human error, everyone's human, you know, we make errors. So what sort of controls are in place to ensure that the metrics we are measuring are accurate?
Thank you, Councillor. You mean the information we're reporting against each metric is accurate? So thank you very much for the question. The Insights and Intelligence team sits within my remit and works very closely with colleagues who in the performance team who put these reports together. And as you would expect, there is a process of QA both in the service, so with the service who use the data on a regular basis. There's a QA process before that information comes to the corporate centre. And then there is another QA process once the information is put into this report. That is alongside the data bank, which we've discussed previously, so the benchmarking, and we would be able to see anomalies against both the trajectory of former data, but also the trajectory of the benchmark. And so colleagues in the teams undertake that QA throughout the process.
Thank you. Is that the 4.6 when it says that each metric has gone through an assurance process? Is that it, what you're talking about there?
That's part of it. The assurance process you're referring to in the paper is the initial assurance process about where the data comes from and how we select the metric and know that the tolerance for that metric is correct. And then each quarter there is a QA process to ensure the data reported on that occasion is also accurate. So it's two parts of the process.
Thank you. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Anderson? Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, my question is around the education side as well, so you may have to come back. But Councillor Anderson, at 6.35, you will see that we have now employed an ed psychologist, which is great news. My question is that a permanent employment, or is it an interim or a part-time? That's what I'd like to know. Thank you.
Councillor Cecil.
Thank you, Chair. On page 49, 121, the transform and continuously improve our services, the first milestone, we were appointing a delivery partner to give us some assistance, PwC, and they were due to report on the 31st of October. So what was the quality of their strategic business cases and that was provided to the senior leadership team and the directors?
Thank you very much for the question. So PwC supported both SLT and assistant directors in the development of proposals whereby we can make both savings and changes in our services. So it was in partnership rather than just allowing PwC to do this. They worked very well with our ADs and they produced very good quality business cases with us, which has underpinned the proposals that we brought to this committee in the last meeting for savings for the next financial year. It was a very good working relationship where there was a good degree of challenge to make sure that we were both being ambitious and realistic within the confines of the circumstances we find ourselves in Thurrock. But one of the advantages of having PricewaterhouseCoopers is that they have worked in other authorities. One of the things that you have to learn in a council that's in intervention that is struggling is that you need to learn from others and you need to learn from the best. And the expertise that they brought is that they're able to bring examples of where we could innovate and do things differently, which both achieve savings but without doing too much to impact or to continue to deliver quality outcomes for our residents. So it was a good return on working with them. It was a contract that was managed tightly, and when it concluded, it was over and they stepped away. And those business cases are very much owned by the ADs, SLT, and indeed cabinet members. And as I say, we took this committee through it in our last meeting.
Much obliged. Impressive answer. Thank you.
Any other questions from members? No? Okay, thank you. Just a couple from me then. Page 40, the slippage in the realisation of savings. We're currently at 79% at Q2. The target is 100%. Last year we hit 91%. If we're at 79% at Q2, what are we doing to bring that back and nearer to our target of 100%? Because as we know, where we don't hit a saving in one area, it has to come from somewhere else. And I think we're probably just in that zone now where, you know, we should be concerned that we're not getting near to that 100%. So just wondered if you could give us an assurance.
Yeah, I can give you a bit of an update. So we are about to take to Cabinet Q2 outturn, which we will see an improvement in that position. But obviously there still is a proportion of the savings that we know are going to be read. We are currently looking at mitigations for that. It is not without beyond the reach of the directorates to cover what is actually classed as unachievable. It's in a better position than is currently showing on that, because this is obviously a snapshot in time. But happy to go through it when we do the Q2. It is going to Cabinet on the 17th, so I presume I'll be doing Q2 in January, where I can go into further detail and update you further.
Thank you.
But also what you have to understand as well with some of these is sometimes how things are weighted. So we are reporting against last year, and it's sometimes how the weighting, and we can't quite get how you'd report it's slightly different weighting because you won't see how the previous years has been done. But I can assure you we are in a slightly better position. As I said, there is a proportion that is red, but it is being worked with the directorates, and I'm more than happy to give you a further update in January.
Thank you. Yeah, we look forward to that. So on page 63, under the metrics there, percentage of 2-year-olds registered for additional support through government-funded early years provision, and the one underneath that, the target is quite a bit lower than the benchmark, and there's a few metrics throughout the paper where we've set our target lower than the benchmark. Obviously, I can't go through each one here, but where we've got a benchmark, presumably that's what we're saying is sort of how our comparable councils are, what level they're at. Why would we set a target that is below a benchmark? I know there are always localised factors that can influence that, but reading through this, there were several places where we'd set our target lower than the benchmark. I would think at first glance the benchmark should be the target.
I think, Sarah, do you want to comment on that one?
It's done on a case-by-case basis. When we speak to the service about the individual metric, we look at the previous year's outturn, we look at the trends, and we look at the benchmark, and we look at what they want to achieve during that year and any pressures that are ongoing, including resources. We have used those conversations to challenge and to stretch, but it is done on a case-by-case. So if there is an example that we can investigate further, we can come back with a bit more information, but that's the basis of which we have the conversations with services on those metrics.
Kind of brings us back to sort of themes that have occurred before when we've sort of asked if you could give us an assurance that these targets are stretching enough. And it comes back to the point where we get told that the services themselves set the target, and of course, I understand why they do that because they have the knowledge, but I just don't ever feel assured that really if it's like marking your own homework. If you're saying to the service, what are you aiming for, there's always be a temptation to go for the easy hit. And when you look at a benchmark which tells us what comparable local authorities are at, and we set our target lower, it does kind of give credence to the feeling that services might be saying, well, we'll do a bit, this is our target. There's no justification. Well, I'm sure there is. I don't want to go for them individually because I don't really like doing that at committee. It's better, I think, at the individual committees. But I still have that concern that individual services are still able to set their own targets, their own milestones, their own metrics, and perhaps there isn't enough testing of that when you look at it alongside the benchmark and they've just set. Perhaps it will be helpful for future reports if where there is a target that's below the benchmark, we get some narrative around why that's the case.
If I may, Chair, I think that's a really, really strong, very, very fair point. And I think providing that narrative, I think, would be incredibly helpful. I want to just tease out a little bit of detail. I think having the benchmark in itself is quite healthy because we aren't just relying on what a service may well or may not say about what they can do. But in developing these targets, it's not just the service itself that sets it. It is a dialogue between my team within performance around what they think is stretching. It's a dialogue with the service about what they think is possible. There's no point having an unachievable target because that isn't really motivating to a service. You've got to give them something that is plausible. And secondly, we then go through an assurance process at SLT where we look at this. We have a conversation with our portfolio holders about what is achievable. And obviously, as ever with Thurrock, we have commissioners. And we sit there and we go through this with the finance commissioner and the lead commissioner to see whether they think it's stretching or not. So I completely understand that it can appear as though we're lowballing it without a doubt. And without that narrative, it does appear like that. But there is an assurance process to make sure this isn't just services setting themselves easy homework, without a doubt.
Thank you. I'm not saying that is happening, but it's our job
But
to
it
sort
could
of
appear
test
like
that point, I
Without
think.
a doubt.
Councillor Fletcher?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I was just going to suggest a recommendation that where we have a target that is lower than the benchmark, that it just, and this is, can we just take it as read? There will be commentary. You know, rather than just, oh yeah, we ought to do that. Let's get that down as a principle, because I think everybody, you know, this side of the fence would probably have the same reaction.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, just an sort of overall observation from me on the, you know, it is a really good report. It reads better, it presents better, it's been refined and it does present better, but looking through it, there is for me a bit of a theme in a lot of the milestones, which is that rather than having tangible outcomes, I counted about 30 of them where the milestone is we have set a strategy, we are agreeing a plan, we've set up a board, we're preparing this report, this network survey campaign. They're not the outcome that really I want to be seeing. They just tell me something's happened. There's far too much, we've hit green because we're in the process of setting up this strategy, or we're in the process of preparing a business case, an initiative, action plan, working group. All those words are used throughout the document. They don't actually tell me what the outcome of that is. And I think there's far too many milestones that are green because there's a plan, there's a board being set up, or in the process of agreeing some terms of reference. That doesn't explain the outcome. So moving forward, it would be really helpful, I think, if we saw a bit more focus on the tangible outcomes of those things, because that can't be the end result. Saying that we're green because we've set up a working group, we're green because we've set up, the word business case is repeated en masse throughout this document. Having a business case doesn't get the baby bathed. It's what comes out of that business case that I would want to see and that I think we should be measuring. There's far too many green milestones just because we've set up a program, we've set up a project plan. Can we start seeing more outcomes from them and look at those kind of things? They're the things we should be measuring.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. It's an incredibly helpful comment. I think the nature of drafting milestones at the beginning of the year leads colleagues across the council to think about activity, and so they think about the first or second step of that activity because it is hard to articulate what the third or fourth step might be before the first or second step have been articulated or been completed. You're right that we need a stronger focus on outcomes. As the leader said at the beginning of this item, this work will continue to evolve. Your feedback and your thoughts will absolutely be taken on board. When it comes to the metrics, we have mapped the metrics very closely to what the government has put out for consultation on the local government outcomes framework. There are a set of outcomes from across the government that the MHCLG say are the outcomes we should be focusing on across various policy areas across Whitehall. And they are what, once the consultation is finished, they are what we expect them to measure local government performance against. Helpfully, they are a set of outcomes. It is easier to map metrics against those outcomes, but I see the maturity of this work as having both milestones and metrics that are mapped against those outcomes. And I'd be interested in coming back to the committee with some further work on that as that consultation ends and the government give us more detail about what the outcomes framework will be.
Thank you. So you're saying as we get into quarter 3, quarter 4, we should begin to see more actual outcomes from some of these milestones at the minute. We don't really know how they're shaping services, what the outcome is. We'll get more of a flavour of that as we move through the latter quarters.
So what we don't do in the reporting is change the milestones in year, but what we can do is ensure that the commentary against the milestone, even where it is green and achieved, shows you more of an outcome focus in this year. And then as we draft milestones for next year, we would do so with a more outcomes-focused approach. So we can have a more outcomes-focused narrative in this year and more outcome-focused milestones next year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so I think apart from the recommendation that we've captured, which I think would be really helpful, that we have more narrative around the benchmarking. I think there's no specific recommendations for cabinet or anything like that, but it's obviously this is a frequent item to us, so we'll monitor that as that progresses. So thank you, Leader. Thank you for that, Patrick.
You're welcome.
So we are moving on to item 7, which is Greater Essex Devolution and Local Government Reorganisation Update. And I think, Leader, are you going to speak first?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, again, I'll introduce it. I suppose there'll be some questions in between me and the officers. We'll do our best to answer, but don't expect too much. So don't all get excited over the other side of the room. So let me first talk about local government reorganisation. So just over 2 weeks ago, the government informed us that the local government reorganisation consultation on options for Essex would go live. So government is running their consultation from the 19th of November to the 11th of January 2026, so just over 7 weeks. If you haven't already done your consultation, can I please encourage you to do it? I've done it. It took about 20 minutes. Plenty of room in there to have all of your feedback, but you have to fill in every box. So don't just sit there and think you're just going to comment on one of them. You need to comment on all of them. Thurrock Council, local partners, neighbouring authorities have been invited to take part in this consultation, and we are using communication channels to promote the consultation to residents and other interested parties. Given the time that we have to respond, which includes the holiday break, Cabinet will consider the questions at the 17th of December Cabinet meeting. So I thank officers for the quick work to ensure an item can be discussed at this committee here this evening, where your feedback will then be noted by the Cabinet. So I encourage you to have some feedback on LGR. So just to give you a quick devolution update. So Chair, before I update you, I just wanted to have a comment on devolution in the light of today's announcement by the Minister of Devolution. So along with our partners across Essex, we have made good progress in making sure that we are ready to create a combined authority and have a new mayor elected in 2026. But today the government has announced that those elections will be postponed until 2028. I was informed of this decision late last night, just before the story broke in the press. We are working through the implications and what they are for Greater Essex with our partners, and I've met both the Essex leader and the Southend leader first thing this morning. And once we have some clarity from government, I will update this committee as soon as possible. All leaders have agreed today that we are still committed to devolution and to securing powers locally for the people of Thurrock and Essex. So we will still have a combined authority, although it will be a much smaller team that does this work between now and 28. So it's not a stop, as has been the case in previous years. It's just that you just won't have a mayor until 2028. So I'm happy to take some questions, and between me and my officers, we'll try to answer them. But since it was only today, I wouldn't expect that we have probably some of the in-depth questions that.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for introducing that item. It's been reported that government is arguing that more time is needed to reorganise local government in the said areas. Obviously, up until now, we've been hearing at committee that, you know, we're all working hard, we're on track, and we had a timetable for mayoral elections to take place, you know, in a matter of months. And so what is government seeing that we're not? Why has government taken a step back here and said, oh, you need a couple more years? Because I haven't got this from council. I don't know where this has come from. Why have they done this? What are they seeing that we're not?
So I'll say how I see it, and then I'll hand it over to officers. So first of all, I want to say thank you to the officers that have put in a tremendous amount of work across all of the councils. You know, this has been a flat out, and we was working to that timetable. We literally was. So I'm as disappointed as everybody else, you know, that the news that we got came when it did. But there is 155 days, right? So every time we went to a meeting, it was like, oh my God, how have we got to get this work done? And we would get it done, you know. So, but we had an interim chief executive officer that is due to start in December, which was a seconded officer. So we would have an office, he would have a team, we would be able to get some initial work done, you know, and some programs set there. But it always was, it's hard work to get this done. And sometimes I came in later, you know, I know I've only been leader since May. It was a little bit before, like the cart before the horse sometimes, you know, like you're pushing all the time and it's fast. And this is just about taking a step back. And whilst it's really disappointing, I can see the thinking, it's not a stop. You know, in previous times it's been a stop. This is, you will get, this allows that office to work with its partners, whether it's business, organisations, the communities, and make sure that for them to be really successful, and evidence has shown that the most successful strategic authorities are ones where they've already got those really strong links. So I would say, yes, I'm disappointed to hear it, and yes, we would have done it. No, I didn't have any indication any more than anybody else. But I think that in the long term, it's the right decision. It's just, you know, that's how I see it, is that we was motoring ahead. When you just think there's 155 days and that chief executive officer is only just in post. So there's no office, you know, there's no policies. We've had policy teams working, you know, there's policies there. We've been working on the Constitution. We've had our own councillors working on the Constitution. But at the same time, it was always at a pace. So isn't it right? I guess the government sees it's better to get it right than motor ahead and, you know, stumble into it. So I think that's how I see it. Alex has had meetings other than I've had today, so he may have something more to add to that.
Thank you. It's a fair challenge to say, are we as Thurrock and are we as Greater Essex in a good place to deliver? And as the leader said, I think if the elections are being held in May or the combined authority created in the new year, which we understand from government they are keen to actually create the entity fairly soon, I think we are in a strong position to proceed. Without a doubt, because we've worked incredibly hard. But I think the government, from what I've listened to in terms of the debate in the chamber and the WMS, and then the meeting with officials, they have looked at the overall programme, because this isn't just affecting Greater Essex, and they are clearly making a distinction between those areas that have already got unitary authorities, rather than those that aren't going through local government reorganisation, and they are, new ministers are just looking at this and thinking we are going to take a little bit of time, because they want to get it right from day one, and the risk of not getting it right can cause quite significant problems. So clearly the government has taken that decision. We will use that time wisely, but I think it is fair in our assessment that if we were to proceed early next year, we would have made it happen and we're in a good position. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't make use of more time to ensure that we really are ready for a new elected mayor. But it's more than just the mayor. It's about how the three upper tiers work together as well. And that relationship on Devo is strong, and I hope it continues to be so.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I recall when you know this all first came about. You know, colleagues, quite a few colleagues, sort of suggesting it was pie in the sky that this was ever going to be delivered on the original timetable. So it's not a question for you, but I suppose I'm just wondering why on earth government, you know, pressed ahead with the original timetable, if you know, other people could see it wasn't going to end well if we kept to the same timetable. I don't know why they couldn't, but you know that's not a question that you can answer. I think it's part of a wider problem, though, because I mean, there now feels like a level of uncertainty. I mean, we've had this for quite a while now on a national level. You know, U-turns on various policies, two-child benefit cap, you know, winter fuel, etc., etc. And now the government are U-turning on their own timetable for delivery of devolution. So my question is, given all that uncertainty, how confident do you think, I know you don't have the answer per se, how confident are you that the new timetable will be stuck to and what is currently intended for delivery will be delivered?
So I think everyone at the moment understands that circumstances change and it is a fluid situation, but you have to deal with these things in the way that it's presented to you by government and what they have committed to. So indeed there has been change in terms of the timetable, but there has not been a change from what we have seen to the commitment to devolution. They still want mayors, they still want us to proceed at pace with creating a combined authority prior to there being a mayor. They have announced today that they are confirming the investment fund for Greater Essex, which is a significant amount of money, and that's going to start even before we have a mayor elected in 28. We'll get a third of that money each year from the next financial year moving forward. So indeed, it was a change that we didn't anticipate and that we were ready, but the government has confirmed that they do want devolution. They have consulted on this and taken that decision. They're not shying away from that, and they've committed to the funding. So in good faith, we accept that, and we are working towards it. I think the other thing I would add is that the premise for devolution in Greater Essex and elsewhere is there's a lot to gain. You know, there is a huge amount we can drive in terms of economic prosperity if we work better with each other. And the government knows that, the previous government knew that, you know, that's the success of devolution. So I don't think anyone's going to shy away from that initial principle as to why we have Devo. Admittedly, the timing's been slightly changed, but the fundamentals to devolution are still there. The government has reiterated its commitment to that, and we will continue to deliver.
Yep, certainly.
Thank you very much, Chair. The rationale for the cancellation of last year's elections at the time was this council's desire and you know, wider Essex's desire to join the devolution priority programme, which at the time had a timetable, as was. It now isn't. Cancellation of those elections was utterly pointless, wasn't it?
At the time, you know, we had a timetable that we was working to, and we had to get our paperwork in, you know, so at the time of cancelling those elections, it was the right decision for this council to do so.
Any other questions? Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Chair. Leader, I'm sure you're as fed up as all of us of this. I know you've worked incredibly hard on trying to get it there, but you know, you and I have had conversations about where I said I really think full council should have made it, or not should have made this decision, should have discussed this decision. And we, you know, you quite rightly said you didn't have the time at the time because of the. I mean, will this cost us any more money? I know some money was put aside, but you know, is this going to put even greater on our, you know, string on our purse? So are we going to have to spend more money because of this extra time that's gone forward? And now we know it's 2 years. Can I ask that a lot more comes back to full council rather than just in committee meetings, please?
Yeah, I think up until now, since I've been leader, I've done regular updates to full council, you know, and if there's something that needs to be in this chamber for all 49 to discuss, then I will make sure that it does there. You know, I'm not a person to shy away from, you know, having the difficult conversations. So when it comes, if there was more that I had that I could share with you today, I can assure you that I would be doing that. I do have, you know, various meetings over the next week or so. And as soon as I've got anything, you know, whether it's through an announcement, an email out to full council, me coming here, or just an email even to make sure all 49 councillors are on top of stuff, I'll make sure that you get that.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Leader. You know, I appreciate that. But as I said, I remember having this conversation with you. I know there's 49 councillors in here, and I don't always agree with you know, all of them. But when I hear all 49 speak, or they're able to speak about something, it does sometimes change my mind or make me feel differently. So that I would like to think that discussion come back to full council rather than just being updated. That's what I'd really like to see, as we now have a timetable. But I am interested in the money, whether there's any extra money that we have to pay out in this.
In terms of financial commitments, you're right. Cabinet and indeed Council agreed an element, a small pot of money to support both devolution and local government reorganisation, and I can assure you that's managed very tightly. We haven't spent as much as we anticipated at all on devolution, and where we have spent some money has been about buying in specialist resource or challenge to support what we've been doing in terms of policy. Now, that work that we've done is not wasted. As I said earlier, we're still going to have a combined authority. There's still going to be a spatial strategy, you know, and everything else. So it's not wasted. I think actually, if anything, because we aren't working as quickly, where you haven't got that time pressure, it is easier for us to think about how we absorb work within the officer cadre to get things done, rather than thinking, actually, I'm going to buy in some capacity because I've got that pressure. So it will provide some degree of flexibility for us, really, to take slightly different decisions. And that isn't just a Thurrock thing. I mean, Southend, who have been leading on the Constitution, Essex with the operating model, we're all in the same position, but we've really locked down a lot of the costs involved, and I have no doubt that that will continue in future, because we do all have limited resources on this, and we'll continue to manage it tightly.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going on the principle that giving us more time puts it in a better position to do it right. I really would like to see some priority attached to communicating what Devo and LGR are. I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I recently had a conversation with a woman in Greggs in Ockenden. It may surprise you that I'm a Greggs customer, who had very strong views based on really very little knowledge, and you know, I was able to sort of try and explain a couple of things to her. But I think people out there generally, they're not really sure what it's being presented to them, or not presented to them, what it means for them, what it means for the future. And we have the opportunity now to try and make that picture clearer. And I have to say that perhaps, excuse my heresy, but perhaps what this says to us is that we maybe need to rely slightly less on central government to do our communicating for us if we want people to understand it and believe it.
Yeah, before you do, I mean, you've hit on a point that I was going to raise in a minute. I think the thing that we're all losing, whatever we're losing sight of it, I think the government's clearly lost sight of it, is that, you know, it's not just about us in here and them. It's about, you know, hundreds of thousands of people across Essex and tens of thousands of people here in Thurrock. Didn't really get the concept of elected mayors before, other than there's not a very popular one up the road in London, but it's a bit alien to them. And they've gone from knowing nothing about it. We're just getting to a point where I think people were beginning to take an interest, were beginning to understand one was coming, and then without any consultation with local authorities in Essex, including the upper tiers, the government just rushes out an announcement in the national media, and then we'll talk to councils in the days after. I do think putting all party politics aside, it doesn't matter whether it was a Labour government doing this or a Conservative government doing this, it is contemptible the way that they have gone about doing this, to basically make the announcement like that before there's been any real dialogue with council leaders about any thought as to how this now affects our communication with our residents, I think is really, really reprehensible. And I hope that that's a message you'll take back. How can you carry people with you and sell this idea when, just like that, it's not slightly delayed, it's not been delayed by a year, it's gone from 2026 to 2028, and I think that's really quite a poor show. But did you want to come back on Councillor Fletcher's point?
Yeah, so I'll come back on a little bit on both of them. So, first of all, I think that there is a bigger process, a bigger piece of work than just the residents understanding the difference between local government and reorganisation. And even though we have had sessions about it across the council and invited councillors to attend those, you know, take-up's been quite poor, and we are the people that should be out there speaking to our residents, whether it's, you know, through our surgeries, through our ward work, you know, attending the Let's Talk events with Cabinet, you know, people just don't understand, but neither do councillors. And today, oh my God, I see a councillor has wrote up, LGR's being cancelled, the 3, the 4 and the 5 might not happen, it's now not going to happen for 2 years. And I was like, oh my God. And this is a councillor's wrote this on social media today. So that shows you that not only do residents not understand it, that's the level that, you know, we've still got to go back to basics. So if it was 2 years of being able to, you know, let's, you know, pin it home and make sure everybody sings from the same hymn sheet on what 3, 4 and 5 is, you know, what LGR is, what devolution is. So there is a big piece of work. And I can assure you, Councillor Maney, that me, the leader of Essex and the leader of Southend, one have already made it very clear how disappointed the message came out. And we have a meeting next week where I think that we'll drum it home just as hard, because, you know, a lot of work has gone into this, you know, and we're as disappointed as anybody else. Although some people are disappointed today that they're not getting a vote for a mayor next year, but yesterday they didn't want a mayor in Essex. So, like, it's the same people on Facebook saying, they've took my right to vote, but yesterday it was, we don't want a mayor in Essex. That's not our democracy. So, literally, it's that same vessel of people that today are moaning they're not having a mayor that wanted a mayor. You know, so I find that quite, I say that quite tongue-in-cheek, really, but that is something that I did have a little chuckle about in amongst all of this today, is that, yeah, people will just moan for moaning's sake sometimes. But I take it that there is a big piece of work to do. So let's use the time that we do have.
Sorry if I might just come back there, Chair. Totally agree with that. And it does need to start with councillors. I mean, there's a bit of me thinking, we keep saying we want to debate it, and yet we don't actually seem to have worked out what the thing is that we want to debate yet. But fine, I think it's for the people initiating this, for yourselves, to actually put a definite plan together and say, right, over the next X months, we will do X, Y, and Z to make sure that councillors actually have a clue what they're talking about, for a change, and then cascade it out from then to wider residents. Let's have a definite plan. Totally agree with what you're saying. Let's have a definite plan to deliver it.
Yeah, we'll commit to making sure that we put on a session, and let's see how many of the 49 actually turn up. Thank you.
Thanks. I think, we've done this point before, but if you want member engagement, perhaps strive for something at which we can debate rather than be talked about, and then I think you will get more engagement. Most other councils did have debates on this, which, you know, we sort of went down the line of, we'll have sessions where you can come and be talked at, or, you know, hear the latest plans. I think what sort of members are saying is it will be helpful to have something where we can have a bit more debate, because I think that way people feel there's input. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Cecil?
Thanks, Chair. On page 90, it talks about tasks and finish groups. What level of worthies were on these task and finish groups, and how much have they produced, and when will we see it?
So we undertake the work on policy for the combined authority that involves the county, Southend, ourselves, and some of the districts. And it's about working out what we do when we get power handed down from central government, or how do we coordinate the development of, for example, a transport strategy. So there's a lot of relatively, I was going to say dull, but it's officers' work about how do you get three kind of organisations to work better and align our strategies and our thinking. So we develop task and finish groups, very particularly because I like them to have a tight remit, a fixed amount of time, and then it ends. You know, it's a way of something not just dragging on. And they're underway at the moment. They're due to finish in April. And that work underpins how we want to take forward having a shared evidence base. Because actually, if we all understand the evidence about, you know, what are our potential areas for growth, what are our levels of unemployment, what are our skills gaps, where are our travel to work zones, all of that, and there's no argument, you can then start working out, well, what are your priorities? So we've set up these task and finish groups to do this particular work, and in January, or into the new year, that was the plan prior to today's announcement. We might take a little bit longer. We will start having some of the outputs of that work so that all three, so Essex, Southend and Thurrock, can start thinking about that and how that underpins the work of a new combined authority.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any final questions or comments before we move on? Councillor Holloway.
Yeah, I'll take one, Chair. Just a point of clarification, bearing in mind the news that has come to this council so recently at national level. I just thought I'd give an update. As you know, myself and Councillor Heath sit on the Devo Mayoral Constitution Working Group with our fellow councillors across Essex. And just to clarify, the timetable that we were working to and have met to get that constitution in place to submit to be signed off by government was on time. Now, I can say that on behalf of, I believe I can speak on behalf of my colleagues from Essex County and Southend. We were meeting our deadlines, but what we can't do is speak for the other partners who are in devolution process themselves, the other authorities that are in the white paper. But we were holding our end up in not only in Thurrock but across Essex to try and do the right thing. And you can take it from me, Chair, that we are as bemused as this council, as this committee is at this time on the news that we've had at this moment. No further comments.
Thanks very much for that update. Okay. Any final comments? No? Alex? No? Okay, we'll move on then to item 8, which is the work programme. Lucy, could you just take us through that, please?
Thanks, Chair. I'll take the work programme, the action log and the recommendations tracker all as one, if that's okay. So I won't go through the work programme line by line, just very quickly as an update, we've got the extraordinary meeting scheduled for the 20th of January to look at the draft budget as well as the Q2 finance report and one of the recommendations from budget scrutiny regarding smarter commissioning. And then we have the final meeting of the municipal year in March 2026. The action log, most of the actions have been completed. There are still some outstanding regarding budget scrutiny, but those are ongoing and are in the process of being completed. And the recommendations tracker is as read. Happy to take any comments or amendments on any three of the documents. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Are there any questions or comments on those items? No. Thanks. Okay, thank you very much. In that case, that concludes all our business tonight. So it is 4 minutes past 8. I'll close the meeting. Thanks, everyone, for your attendance, and Merry Christmas.